5th, 2024 to order. The public can access this meeting via WebEx technology. I can't zoom in. Okay. I will just read the meeting number is 2331-841-5102, and the password is Burlington with a capital B. All right. The first item of business is the approval of the meeting minutes of June 4th. So I originally tried to push these off as housekeeping items, but for the submission, we have to have approved minutes from every single meeting. So we have to approve these, and we will have to approve tonight's minutes before they're able to fully submit to the MSBA. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Mrs. Bond?
Aye. Aye.
Ms. Monaco?
Aye.
Mr. Wojcik?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Dr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Cuna?
Yes.
Mr. Denizio?
Yes.
Mr. Rosenblatt?
Abstain.
I got Mr. Villano on the phone, right?
Yes.
And Ms. Priest?
Aye.
I'm an aye, so 10-01. Okay. We have invoices and commitments. Do you want to go through them, Steve, or?
Sure. There's 3 invoices for review and approval tonight. First one's Doran Whittier invoice number 21 in the amount of $20,787.50 for time towards schematic design. Do you want me to just run through all of them quickly? Sure. The next 2 are from Danisco Design. The first one is invoice 10017 in the amount of $58,333. That's the second to last periodic billing for schematic design for the base scope of services. And then the last Danisco invoice is 10018 in the amount of $1,545.50. And that's progress billing towards the hydrology study, which was one of the reimbursable expenses.
Any questions for Doran Whittier or Danisco? No? Okay. I think we can approve these all together.
Motion to approve the invoices as presented.
Second.
Any other comments? No. Ms. Bond?
Aye.
Ms. Monaco?
Aye.
Mr. Wojcik?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Dr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Cuna?
Yes.
Mr. Denizio?
Yes.
Mr. Rosenblatt?
Yes.
Mr. Villano?
Yes.
Ms. Priest?
Aye.
I'm a yes. I didn't gain anyone else, right? So 11-0. Thank you. All right. Who's going to present the?
I think I'll kick it off. We're here for several reasons tonight, but at least as far as this committee, this is the big one on the agenda for tonight. As you all know, we've been working through schematic design and through the entire feasibility process for about a year and a half now, and this is culminating into the final submittal of the feasibility study process to the MSBA for the schematic design, which, as we reviewed a couple meetings ago, is to identify the scope, the budget, and the schedule for the project. Our last meeting, the first week of June, we reviewed generally how the budget gets assembled, the construction cost estimating process. During that meeting, we did also review some of the value engineering items that were up for discussion. The result of that meeting was a vote to approve a blended rate of the 2 estimates we had at the time, also including the larger of the 2 options for the canopies, for at least for the terms of the scope and the budget for the project. So we wanted to at least update you on that process, as well as just summarize the uploading of the schematic design submittal at the beginning of last week for the folks that had a chance to review that. and go through all several hundred, if not thousands of pages worth of information. We thank you. Hopefully the comments that were asked have been addressed, and we can open it up for any comments in a moment too if you have some to share publicly. But just to recap from last meeting, if you could flip to the next page. Also included in the backup were a couple of the budget milestone submittals. On the left-hand side of the page was the 3011, which is the total project budget worksheet. It's intentionally small as there's a lot of work within the math or within the cells and in the math of the worksheet. That is available on the backup to the meeting for those that would like to see it. In that spreadsheet are several tabs. That's kind of the progression of the total project budget since preferred schematic report when we were looking at the 3 A's, the 3 B's, and the 3 C's and D's, if you can remember that process. So for those that want to look into the history and how that's evolved, that's there for you to dig into. But on the right-hand side of the page is a screenshot of another item in the backup folder, which is a summary of that process from schematic design when we were looking at the blended rates of the two estimates, the natural gas, the diesel generator options. So it's really just to summarize where we were at the beginning of June and reflects the motion and the approval to move forward with the budget that we're reviewing tonight. So in that right, furthest to the right column that's highlighted in red does reflect that canopy option as well as the blended rate. So there's the total project budget bottom line number we shared at the beginning of June did move a little bit based on that decision. So we just wanted to be transparent and clear on what that bottom line. I think we're all kind of doing back of the napkin math at the time, but did want to share what the final value is. And so we're asking for 2 votes tonight. One is to acknowledge the final budget where we ended through the value engineering and the estimating process in early June, and then also following that a submission to allow us to submit the final version of the schematic design submittal that's been uploaded as a draft. So I'll pause there, and if there's any questions for the design team or the OPM team, we'd be happy to address those.
I think it might be worth noting here too that we do have a placeholder on the warrant for the diesel amendment for the zoning change. Bob, you're making me concerned. Yes, we do have a placeholder. Okay. Okay. We're attempting to get a placeholder so that this zoning, we've had many conversations with different folks, but we expect to move forward with the zoning amendment in September. Do you want to add anything?
No, just in speaking with Mr. Sagarino, he put a placeholder on, and we're setting up a time with town council to make sure the language is correct. So that would be for September. If there's ever a problem with the September or the language, my understanding is January would still be workable. So, but we didn't want to wait for that. So we have every intention of putting forward a correct zoning language within the time frame for consideration at September town meeting.
I can't see any hands online. I guess not, probably not. All right, Steve, so, Ms. Priest.
So based off of that, that 0 that's entered in under the estimated mass save incentive is that way because right now we can't do the diesel, but if it does change, that can change to be an incentive,
Yes.
correct? Okay.
Okay, so we need a
And
vote.
I guess
yeah.
just to clarify, so the cost is also reflected at the higher cost for the gas generator as well. So as soon as this passes, the project budget will be reduced by that amount.
Yeah, I thought we did take a vote on the budget at the end of the last one. You want to clarify?
We did, but I don't know if it was for the amount that's reflected on the screen because it's
Okay.
within the lines of the construct. There's some trickle down
Okay,
modifiers to it. So I just wanted to be
okay.
exceedingly clear.
So
on the
you
amount.
would like the estimated total project budget of $100,484,141
Correct.
to move forward. Okay. Okay.
Second.
All right, any questions? Do you want to go back to that slide real quick? Just, you can point to it. Oh, maybe not, never mind. It's like it's not the bottom line, it's about 2/3 of the way down.
Yep,
Any
The one
questions?
highlighted in gray.
Yeah, we can't see it there, it's fine, I can see it. It's $100,484,141.
Correct.
All right, budget. Ms. Bond?
Aye.
Ms. Monaco?
Aye.
Ms. Wojcik?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Dr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Cuna?
Yes.
Mr. Denizio?
Yes.
Mr. Rosenblatt?
Yes.
Mr. Villano?
Yes.
Ms. Priest?
Aye.
I vote aye, so that's 11-0. All right, and now we'll look at the actual schematic design submission. It's on the screen if anyone wants to read it. Do you want me to? I'm looking for a motion to authorize the OPM Dorn Whittier Management Partners to submit the schematic design submission on behalf of the town of Burlington to the Massachusetts School Building Authority.
Second.
Any questions, comments here? All right, Ms. Bond?
Aye.
Ms. Monaco?
Aye.
Ms. Wojcik?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Dr. Conti?
An enthusiastic yes.
Mr. Cuna?
Yes.
Mr. Denizio?
Yes.
Mr. Rosenblatt?
Yes.
Mr. Villano?
Yes.
Ms. Priest?
Aye.
I am an aye as well, 11-0. Congrats. Thank you. We did it. Yeah. It was a lot of work. That part was easy.
So as Melissa mentioned, we do have to approve these minutes to submit the certified submission to the MSBA. We're going to add it as an addenda. So we would like to have a little bit of time. We can do it remote. These are some dates that I pulled off of the town calendar online that had nothing else happening. I was hoping we just need a quorum, basically, to just quickly approve the minutes, and then also if there are any invoices that come in through the end of June.
So we have a school committee on the 11th, right? Of July? No? Is the 23rd too late?
July 23rd?
Just because you're halfway to a quorum.
It shouldn't be. I mean, we have, it's really just to confirm, certify the vote of the committee. It's not going to slow down their informal review. It's just it's something we'll need prior to the project scope and budget
Okay.
conference.
So, or folks want to do like a 6:45? Only we can. You all can remote in. If we'll be here anyway. And Bob sets up a separate WebEx. Does that work?
Thank you.
Perfect. So this August was it same? These options are also just for.
Yeah, those are just open,
Okay.
available dates in case we needed to meet. We don't need to decide anything now.
Okay.
We can talk about that when
Yep.
we meet on the 23rd.
Okay. Hmm. Any other topics? Oh, go ahead, Steve. Yep.
We knew this was a light agenda, so we weren't really sure where we would be time-wise, but just a couple of updates of recent meetings we had. Mentioned the review about the zoning bylaw review to get that filed in time for the article for town meeting. We expect those conversations to continue. There's a couple other either filing or public notice deadlines that are coming up because it's a zoning bylaw. There's a public hearing process. There's deadlines to formally submit the article from the Select Board, I think, which is August 9th. So we expect over the next several weeks for those conversations to continue, and we're here to support that. And also, just a follow-up from the community meeting that we had the week before last, I think between now and the fall, just to make sure if there's anything we can do to sharpen our pencils and make sure that the website's up to date. We heard a couple of comments of just things that might be kind of, unfactual or just holdovers from when the website got spun up. So we were identified or notified of a couple areas of the website that we could probably true up, but just making sure everything is accurate, finalized. We heard a couple of comments of some confusion of things that I think for folks that are part of this committee for quite some time, we're aware of the process and decisions that are made, but it's still clear that there's members of the public that are getting hung up on some of those procedural outcomes that happened, several weeks or months ago. So we just want to make sure that that's available, discoverable on the website, and in methods that are easy to digest. And I think we've talked about what other means and methods and ways we can update the website and other public relations to make sure that those messages are getting out to the general public ahead of town meeting. So nothing more than just making sure that everything's reflective of all the hard work that this committee and others have done in the town over the past year and a half.
Go ahead. Oh, I was just going to ask, think some of the presentations, if we could make them as pages or put the some of the visuals just on the page versus people having to go through presentations, you know what I'm saying? Even if there's just a page, like a main page that is the summary, which could be that community presentation. I think that was some of the feedback I got is oh, you talked about that, but I don't know which one, so I had to dig through. And I know we got a lot of presentations where it's slightly different, right? It was the North A, North B that you alluded to, but so maybe kind of more of just final or most recent up to date and make it a page versus having to click through to a presentation. That's my only comment. Dr. Conti?
No, I guess, Steve, I was thinking too that we have a communications subcommittee, and town meeting is September, why do I have 23rd in my head or something like that? If passed as prologue, then more than likely they'll make the Memorial School the first item, first warrant, sort of a fresh town meeting
Thought so.
body, not bring it out at 10 at night or something like that. That's what they did for the police station because it's such a significant conversation. It appears that there's going to be some non-building based questions. Enrollment, we spent a lot of time talking about redistricting, which, so I just think that presentation and getting feedback from this committee is going to take a while. So I'm not sure what you all are thinking, but, maybe towards the end of August, we should start really, again, I think we're going to need a couple weeks to really put something together that's tight. I'm actually not concerned about the schematics or the building or the square footage or the building itself is beautiful. So that's not my concern. The vast majority of questions we got were enrollment-based, the future, what does the future hold? How are we future-proofing the community, and how does redistricting work? So I just want to make sure that we have those questions answered as best we can, because it also felt like people were saying, you're not answering directly, and again, redistricting is not something that we can say what's going to happen in 2028 when the building opens. But I don't know, I just wanted maybe some of your thoughts on that, because I don't think it's going to be a straightforward, here's the building, here's the design. Again, there's a clear need. Fox Hill is sort of past its useful life. And the finances are taken care of, Roger, but some people weren't really, I think, framing this as a new building financial conversation. It was, again, how are you going to redistrict for the school, I guess. So I'm not really asking a question, but I'm saying I think we need to prepare a presentation that covers more than just how many square footage and the beautiful building that you've all designed.
No, I was going to kind of talk about the redistricting issue as well, or concern that people have. I think in addition to our just talking about it, because in addressing the question, but maybe we can also, because it's something that isn't predictable, right? So maybe we can go back and look at past history and how often we've had to redistrict, and kind of, if that makes sense, so that people can see if there's a pattern or not a pattern, or when we've had to do it. I mean, again, I know it's nothing that we can always predict what's going on or what school. It depends. You don't know how many kids are going to move in this summer, right? And a lot of that redistricting for any school, let alone Fox Hill, is based on what happens over a summer, or who moves out and who moves in and what's going on. So that's why it's so hard to answer, I guess, and why people feel that we're not being direct, is that it's not always a solid, for sure, anything, any year, right? So how do we convey that properly?
I don't know, I'd be open.
Well, and so do we have a communications subcommittee meeting scheduled for July? So I don't want to wait until August. I would love to at least do some brainstorming with the communications working group or subcommittee, start getting it down. Let's start thinking about graphics. Let's start thinking about how we're going to roll some of this out. Every district's so unique, and typically it's not about how beautiful the building is or that the school does not need to be retired or any of that, right? There's always some issues here that's not, even purported to even need a debt exclusion. So really, every district's so unique, and I think this is such a personal and emotional issue that I think we should try it out, and maybe even have some of you also join us on the subcommittee to make sure we're going in the right direction. But if we could have like a brainstorming session in July, that would be great.
Right, and again, through the chair, Melissa, I think some of the comments weren't necessarily relevant to the building project. And we can get as much into the weeds in terms of redistricting as possible, but I think the school committee, for instance, purposefully 4 or 5 years ago, didn't entertain changing the grade configuration. So we're not developing K-4 schools, and someone was asking last night at the Historical Commission why we were moving 5th grade into the middle school, and I said, I'm not sure we were doing that. But other communities, Billerica built their high school with 8th grade sort of in, so there was a grade configuration change. So I'm just wondering if we may need some clarity from the school committee at some point, because, again, if there's no intention of changing the grade configuration, and I haven't heard there has been, and we've had those conversations, and again, that may be something that happens 25 years, like I said, no one can predict the future or the growth, but I just think there were lots of questions like that that really aren't an MSBA question, and it may be something where we say the school committee is committed to, and we can talk about some of that stuff. And I also think there was some misunderstanding maybe about the high-density apartments that are in town as well, and some confusion about how those are redistricted as well, because they tend to be redistricted as a unit, because we can't say Unit 1 goes to this elementary school, Unit 2 goes to this elementary school, or we'd be sending the entire fleet of buses in, and again, it's confusing enough at Beacon Village when some of the units at Beacon Village are in Woburn and some are in Burlington. So we always have confusion even across a town line. So we have to, when we redistrict of those components of town, think of them more as a unit, because ideally you want to send 1 or 2 buses in and out to the same school. So like I said, I want to make sure, I'm over talking, but I just want to make sure we have a communications plan, because I think I think the presentation is going to, unless it's really tight, is going to veer away from sort of the the building, the placement, the room adjacencies, the cost, pretty quickly.
And I was going to comment too on, again, on the redistricting and keeping, like, people talking about the apartment complexes and moving. I mean, the whole point of doing that too is that you're keeping kids with their, essentially the friends and the people they're used to being with. I mean, I grew up in Ohio, 4 elementary schools. I went to 4 elementary schools in 4 years. But, I was on the same bus with the same kids, all the kids in the neighborhood. It didn't matter. Kids are very resilient. I think the parents worry about it more than the kids. And so, I just wanted to make that comment, and I think you're right. If, when people are questioning or making, comments about that, I think it's important to keep those kids together for that reason.
I have a few thoughts on this. If you go back to when MSBA did the enrollment projections, they do enrollment projections based on town-wide, not just on one school. So when they looked at available space and projected out kids in various areas of town and fertility rates, which I thought was somewhat amusing, they have projected that our numbers are going to go down fairly dramatically. And as much as I hate to admit it, they're usually right. So we, in order to do this, had to agree with their projections, which gave us choices of the school that we have planned, which was technically aimed at 325 students because they project our enrollments are going down so much. But the reality is, because they saw the needs with special needs programs and all of that, they've allowed us to build in more space. Now, SBA doesn't tell you have to build this and always forever use it the same way. If we end up having higher enrollments and we end up having to move people around and programs around, the reality is the Fox Hill School will hold many, many more kids than 325. In fact, if you were in a jam like in 1970-something and you put 25 kids in a classroom, you could get up towards 500 to 600 kids in that school. So I think we need to be realistic about the size of it. I also think that if we had gone with the big school, whether it was a butterfly or whether it was just one big school, we would have had 6 classrooms per grade. As it is now, we literally have 4 classrooms per grade, plus we have Pine Glen, which has, 3 classrooms per grade? So we have more space available in the district with this building than we would have had with the other building. And if SBA turns out to be wrong, which I doubt they will, but if they turn out to be wrong, they're not going to give us a hard time about how we district our kids. So I really think we ought to get over this number, 325, and realize that that school will hold a lot of kids and that we're going to do with it as whatever we need to do. The prediction is that we will not need more than 325. If that's wrong, we work from there.
A couple of comments. I think in terms of preparing a presentation for a town meeting, covering the breadth of the topics is good, as Eric has raised. I would also, as a town meeting member, try to not make it really long, because the important part is when the town meeting members get to raise questions and debate. Now, it's nice that you can try to answer all the questions before they ask them, but some people will not listen to that part. So I'll certainly defer to prior experience in terms of presenting the topics, but a nice, tight presentation that's not too long is a great idea. Oh, and on the money end of things, I guess a different topic. When the MSBA votes and prepares the project funding agreement, there's some date in August that happens. You might be able to make some press time out of that, that's the next step. I don't know what has to happen in terms of our accepting of that, or if that's only the town meeting vote that confirms that. But I don't know if there's some other process step in the middle that would either suggest a meeting or need a meeting. So.
So, through the chair. Process-wise, with your vote to submit schematic design tonight, the MSBA will begin their review. We'll have a project scope and budget conference probably in 10 to 14 days, where essentially the time between submittal and the board meeting, they're doing all their checks and balances, reviewing the submittal. But an awfully big part of that is going through the budget, and that happens, probably within 2 weeks of the submittal, depending on how busy this board cycle is. So we'll know, running top to bottom, in acknowledgement of the submittal, what they might have suggested edits or changes, just to make sure that we're confirming it. So that'll happen relatively quickly. But essentially, allowing us to submit is an acknowledgement that, the scope, the schedule, and the budget is what it is at this point. So with that step, it's really in the MSBA's court to review that, to provide a project scope and budget agreement, and that's what gets formalized, voted on at the Board of Directors meeting in August, and so that'll come back to the town with a list of exhibits, the schedule, the budget, the scope documents, that basically packages it all back up, and it lobs it back to the town to basically sign and agree, now that the MSBA's reviewed it and agreed to it, to enter in an agreement. It's not an agreement for reimbursement, but just the project's scope and budget, right, just as the name suggests. But that's the first lob back to the town that gets reviewed by legal counsel to make sure that the folks signing it have the authority, they're bound by local bylaws, et cetera, et cetera. And then once that's out of the way, there's no other formal meeting to be had, other than that there's 120 days for the district to secure the funding. Yep.
I wanted to piggyback on Roger's comment, too, about keeping the presentation as concise as possible, and maybe we just, instead of addressing all the questions up front, is just be prepared, knowing that lots of those same questions are probably going to be asked anyway. Or maybe we just pick a few of the ones we think are going to be most important that we should hit, and the rest we should be prepared. That way we can get through it, because there probably will be a lot of questions, and I think we can anticipate from these past meetings what they'll be.
Sorry. So Dr. Conti had mentioned having the school committee address the whole redistricting piece, and maybe in part of that, a lot of people have brought up how many kids the apartments have brought in. If we can pull those numbers of this apartment building opened this date, this is what our enrollment looked like 1 month, 3 months, 12 months later. I know we've discussed it before, and the numbers aren't that big, but I don't think the general public has seen those numbers. And I think they need to see that those apartment buildings aren't bringing in hundreds of children. And the other piece I was thinking about was after school opens, because right now they're in the shuffle of everything, doing a potential open house for town meeting members to see the current Fox Hill in its current condition with the spaces that the teachers are utilizing and stuff, or encourage them to go to the open house night or whatever. I think that might help some people realize the condition of the school and the need there.
Again, I think, through the chair, I think that's a good idea. I wouldn't want to overlap with open house just because of the traffic and everything else, but we can certainly make the building open some nights. And then instead of just sharing the presentation, maybe I'm just looking at you guys, maybe we should actually have a meeting or two and actually do a run-through with this group, just because you all know all the town meeting members as well as all of us, and I almost do like, dare I say, debate prep, and have you guys ask the questions and make sure that the answers are concise. Because the last feedback I want any one of us to hear is that we're not prepared, or not telling the truth, or not whatever. Some people will only hear something that supports an opinion that they have. We can't fix that, but I do want to make sure that we can have an explanation about enrollment or redistricting that makes sense. If it makes sense to you all, then I can only hope that it would at least make sense to the folks who would be hearing it in a couple weeks. So I just, for that community meeting, I just, I think the town meeting is going to be, the questions are going to be very varied, and I think this is a very expensive thing, so I'm saying I think they're justified, but I just think we're going to have to, if you want a tight presentation, that we're probably going to need almost a whole bunch of slides that we don't use, but we're prepared to have available, as you were saying, Ms. Priest, about even the data for all that stuff, and I just think the prep is going to be important. That's all.
You know how the town hall does, like, what do they call it, when they have their planning meetings where town meeting members go and listen? Are we going to do that?
Again, through
We
the
should.
chair, I think we can do whatever we want. I just think we shouldn't underestimate the importance of the presentation, I guess, is what I'm sort of saying. And the questions are going to be, some people have their minds made up already, others on both sides, and then I think we'll have a core group of people who will have lots of questions, and the questions may not even be about the building, but then we need to be prepared to answer them, and it may be questions also that the committee might need to take a position on. Like I said, grade configuration may be something that you all are just not going to change, and that's not a town meeting, decision sort of at that time. But if we're going to plan on keeping K-5 elementary schools for the next foreseeable future, then that impacts districting and impacts sort of how the schools are, the population of the schools and everything else.
So why don't we have a meeting like a week before town meeting and invite any town meeting members to come in and just talk to us? It doesn't have to be formal, just like they do. Roger, why don't, are you thinking the same thing? I'm sorry, Melissa.
Go ahead.
No, I'm just going to reinforce the point that the town clerk, Amy, regularly schedules meetings primarily targeted at town meeting members in advance of any large item that's on the warrant.
Yeah, so we should do that.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
And I was thinking too, we were talking about, again, reminding people the condition of Vauxhall, and instead of, touring or where we were talking about, I mean, wasn't there a video that was shown, and maybe, we put that up to remind those who saw it a while back when we all agreed to move forward with this, and then there may be people who hadn't seen it before, so it might be a good idea to just pull that back out again and show it.
I think, hopefully I'm not being too naive by saying that when town meeting arrives, I'm hopeful that folks have done the due diligence to become educated prior to town meeting, and I think it's our responsibility to make sure that that information is there. It's kind of unpacking 2 years' worth of, or more, right? Going back to the SOI, 4 years' worth of work, so it's easy to find, or that there's a reference for folks that we can point them to. And I think we've been busy over the past couple of years of just, our heads down working, and so even going back, looking at the website, there's some nuggets there that have just been, they're a little stale, and it's worth taking a sweep now that the work is not done, but, we've reached this milestone, just to go back to make sure that those have been updated. And it's going to take a little bit of work, but I think, after we submit this, we've got a little bit of breathing room to do that. And now that we know what's in there, it becomes a little bit easier just to look at things under that lens. But aside from the website, I think we've heard the common themes of what folks are really curious about or still have questions about, so we can start to pull that together. Maybe not finalize it in any kind of presentation, but at least get, all the data in one place, and then we can review how that's, best presented and shared. And it can evolve between now and September, but at least start to pull all that together, and hopefully we can have that shareable, so that if folks have a question, at least they can go review it, and if there's further questions, have some sort of forum, whether it's this town meeting member night with Amy, to have her host a series, or one in particular I think is a great idea, just to get those questions and invoke a dialogue prior to the night of the meeting. I'm sure we'll still get quite a few questions that particular night, but hopefully all that information has just already been put together and we're just referring to it as backup slides or some other means. But
I asked this before too, I can't remember which meeting, but I think it was Lexington's website had where you could put in your tax bill and you could get spit out like your exact tax impact. I thought that was really transparent and could help people understand as well. I don't know how the calculator worked, but it was on Lexington.
Just one other little comment. This will probably all be done in the communications meeting, but once the materials exist, there are numerous programs on BCAT who could interview and present the material there, and the Burlington Buzz as well would be happy to do, multiple weeks of covering topics and to get the word out as much as possible.
So I guess the other thing I'm thinking about as we have this conversation too is just the data visualization on the website. So having some sort of timeline with the documents hyperlinked, like you said, over the 2 years, just having those milestones we've hit, having the documents hyperlinked right there so people don't have to dig, right? And it's just on one timeline. I poke a button, I see this document, poke the next milestone. That's what is the output of this document, so they can kind of follow chronologically, how they do it. I don't know. Would be a suggestion I'd have.
Through the chair, Mr. Brooks, it's sort of interesting to me because I think the level of detail and documentation we have is, I just was sort of saying that the police station was, we think this is what it's going to look like. Please vote for $48 million. And we have so much more detail that it almost, people are saying you're not transparent. It's almost because there's too much detail to wade through. So you're right. Maybe we have to try to simplify some of the documentation that's there. And again, I support the police. I'm not saying I don't support. I support the police station. I'm just saying just the level of detail that we have is whatever times greater than that presentation. So it's maybe a simplifying, like.
Yeah, I acknowledge your point, right? Because we have so much information, or so much data. How does it become information, right? And I think that's where you call that down a little bit and say, at each milestone, these are the key documents for each one that give you that wave top view of these are the important takeaways you need, and just kind of scope that down with, the hyperlinks to other things if they need it.
I was thinking that if we are doing a program where we either open the school or we do a video that reviews the need inside the schools, I think it's important to have teacher voices and for them to be part of this and to talk about how it's impacting their curriculum and their ability to teach in the buildings. I think that'll be a more powerful message than just showing pictures of, things that are wrong with the building, having an art cart, having the art teacher come and say, I don't even have a classroom to teach in, I have to push this cart around to all the classrooms. I think having personal voices behind the need will be more influential. Thanks.
Just to clarify, I think we do have an art classroom.
I know one of the issues was that there are carts for certain classrooms and certain
There's definitely
specials.
carts, but I think we do have an art classroom.
Well,
Yeah.
Whatever cards we have.
yeah, whatever carts we have. And I know special education services are happening in unique places, and I think talking about that may also be an important thing to highlight.
Madam Chair, my whole sort of reasoning for the rabbit hole conversation here is because the submittal will happen, the vote occurred, the summer's going to happen pretty quickly, and all of a sudden we're going to have a couple weeks before town meeting. And again, given the conversation at the community meeting, I just think we're going to need to really have a lot of information available very quickly. And I just think that's just going to take time. And it's the start of the school year. It's, again, I would love to tell you there's a relaxed time around here when we can just get it done, but there's probably not. But we just have to be ready. And I think you guys have done this a lot for lots of communities. So again, I have the building presentation slides are going to be phenomenal. It just appears to me it's going to be almost our stuff that's going to be, we're going to need to be very clear on some non-building-based conversations and facts and data and things like that. So that's all.
So maybe we could poll and find out about getting communication group meeting like sooner rather than, maybe right after the 4th, if, right? And, I mean, taking all these notes, I love the idea of the video. We shared a video at the last town meeting, a recording, rather than a presentation, and that will keep us on script, that will keep us on point, different voices, talking throughout might be a great idea. And then during the Q&A, they don't want to hear from us. We're the hired consultants, right? So having you all who've worked so hard and so dedicated, and also school committee who's triple duty or quadruple duty here, you know, really, I think, need to rest assured to everyone that what you're saying means something, right? Like hearing from Danisco that your enrollment isn't, it's not going to impact your enrollment, then they don't care, we're going to walk away, right? So just making sure we have the right people answering the right questions or anticipated questions, I think will be really helpful too. So going back to whoever was saying, having these practice runs with people asking the hard questions or anticipated hard questions and all of that. So great stuff. I just would love to continue the conversation. I'm sure tonight isn't necessarily the right forum, but already I think all of our minds are like thinking ahead. So if we could maybe try to schedule a communications right after July 4th, and we'll start assembling some of that information in advance, that would be great.
I see George's hand is online. Nope, just
Through
kidding.
the chair, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to say a couple of things that might be reiterations of what was said before, but I think these are definitely things for the communications group that I'm looking forward to us talking about. But three things that kind of stand out for me. We had that poll tool a year or so ago to capture voices of the community, like an online poll, phone-in poll, and I'm wondering if we can mobilize that to capture some of these concerns before, so we can prep for them. Number two, I loved Chief Brown's approach with the police department when he invited town meeting for a year to say, hey, any town meeting members who want to come tour it, I'll give you a tour. And as a town meeting member, I took him up on it, and that was really, that experience was powerful for me in supporting the new police station. And then it's been alluded to, and Ms. Monaco, the way you spoke about it tonight, I think is a shift in how we've communicated it, but the flexibility of the building after it opens, and our ability to deviate if we need to from the MSBA plan. I think being explicit with that, just from a community meeting, hearing a lot of what was asked, it was alluded to, we can shift it if we need to, but it wasn't explicitly said. And I think that's an important message that might help us.
Again, George, thank you. Through the chair. We have every intention of opening the building as programmed. I don't want to put words in Ms. Monaco's mouth, but I think what you're talking about is sort of beyond the predicted and projected early life of the building. No one's going to come back 10 years from now and say you can't use that room for something else. So again, I think we have the building designed for the program that we need in the short term, and I think our enrollment will reflect the needs that we have, moving forward. But again, the future proofing, the age of Pine Glen. There were a lot of questions that, again, had nothing to do with this project, but we just need to be prepared to answer them as best we can. And I think that's, what I was over talking about. So I think we'll be there. And Don, I really like maybe having different members of this committee addressing certain things. Again, I have to talk about redistricting because that's what I do. And so it's not, it's one of those things, but I just want to make sure it's a conversation that is, that I get some feedback on, that is tight enough where people get their questions answered. And the bottom line is, we might redistrict well ahead of this building being complete. Again, the building has something to do with it, but it's not the only reason why we would even think about redistricting. So I just think, anyway, I've already said what I wanted to say. George, I like the idea of tours of the building, but I'm not comfortable with people coming in when kids are in the building. So we would need to have restricted times, but we could certainly talk to, have some staff there once the kids are out of the building. So evenings, weekends, we could certainly do some.
I think the summer would be ideal.
What?
The summer would be ideal.
It's very hot in there.
Correct.
In the summer. So we could maybe certainly talk about that, and once the building gets a little bit cleaned up and it's not doing that. So again, so we can talk about having it open for a couple weeks, maybe. I don't know, but it's a good idea.
Okay, I don't see any public on the phone or in the room for this meeting. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned.